4 minutes. That was all that stood between a peaceful town and total annihilation. By the end of the night, thousands were gone. Homes had been erased from the map, and an entire valley looked as though it had been wiped from existence. But the most terrifying part was not the 820-foot wave. It was the fact that it should never have happened. The warning signs were there. The reports existed. The danger was known. So how was one of the greatest engineering disasters in history allowed to unfold? And why was there no escape when the mountain finally gave way? This is the story of the Vajont disaster. The clock strikes 10 past 10, but not a soul in the valley of Longarone suspects that time is running out. High above the town, nestled in the jagged embrace of the Italian Alps, the Vajont Dam stands as a monument to human hubris, a concrete giant holding back a reservoir of water that refuses to stay still. If you appreciate these deep dives into the forgotten corners of history where nature and human error collide, consider subscribing to Fact Harbor as we analyze the patterns of the past to understand the warnings of our future. Beneath the surface of the reservoir, the earth is shifting in a way that no one on the valley floor can perceive. A mountain is tired of holding its own weight. It is sliding, slowly, invisibly, toward the basin. 4 minutes remain. In the town of Longarone, the evening meal is cooling on kitchen tables. Children are tucked into beds, their breathing slow and rhythmic, while local fishermen check their gear for the morning, and the rhythm of life feels eternal. They do not know that they are living in the shadow of a ticking time bomb. A wall of water, 820 feet high, is already gathering its lethal potential. How does a wave of this magnitude exist? How does a structure built to protect a population become the instrument of its erasure? We are witnessing the calm before a geological catastrophe that will move faster than human reaction time, a disaster that will leave no room for escape. 3 minutes remain. High on the slopes of Monte Toc, the mountain is not simply shedding rocks. It is collapsing. A massive limestone slab, 260 million cubic meters of earth, is beginning a process known as creep. The engineers who built the dam believed they had mastered the physics of the valley, trusting in their calculations and their concrete. But the mountain has its own agenda. Trees sway, not from wind, but from the shifting foundation of the earth beneath them. A low, guttural vibration begins to hum through the bedrock, a sound so deep that the human ear might mistake it for distant thunder or the rumble of a passing truck. It is the sound of an entire ecosystem failing. 2 minutes remain. The residents of Longarone continue their twilight rituals. A mother hums a lullaby, unaware that the air in the valley is about to change forever. The atmospheric pressure is shifting, as if the very sky is holding its breath. Down by the reservoir, the water begins to churn. The encroaching landslide, traveling at 60 miles per hour, is nearing the water's edge. The displacement is inevitable. The reservoir is not merely holding water, it is holding a lethal weapon that is currently being drawn back. The sheer physics of the event are incomprehensible. A displacement of this magnitude creates a hydraulic shockwave that defies the laws of ordinary flooding. It is not a flood. It is an oceanic force trapped in a narrow valley, forced upward by the sudden intrusion of the mountainside. 1 minute remains. The landslide hits the water. The sound is not a crash, but a terrifying singular roar that shatters the silence of the Alps, loud enough to be heard miles away. The water has nowhere else to go but up. It surges against the dam, rising in a wall that blots out the stars. Those who look toward the mountain see a terrifying sight, a black, solid mass rising against the silhouette of the valley walls. It is 820 feet of kinetic energy, a liquid titan surging with the weight of the mountain itself. In the final seconds before impact, the electricity in Longarone flickers and dies, plunging the streets into a darkness that is almost immediate. The air becomes heavy with the smell of wet earth and pulverized stone. There is no time to run, no time to scream, no time to understand. Impact. The wave does not arrive as a gentle tide. It descends like a hammer blow. When the 820 feet of water crest the dam, it does not stop. It carries the weight of the landslide with it, a slurry of rock, mud, and forest debris. Longarone, with its homes, its people, and its memories, is obliterated in a single catastrophic heartbeat. The force is so absolute that it essentially scrubs the valley floor clean, stripping the structures down to the bare bedrock. It is a 4-minute erasure. The people who were preparing dinner are now part of the history of the Earth, buried under a thick, suffocating layer of silt and stone. The sound of the valley goes from the roar of a jet engine to a horrifying, wet silence. The aftermath is a landscape that feels alien. Survivors from the higher ridges describe a sky filled not with clouds, but with the dust of a pulverized city. They look down into the valley, and where there was once a town of warm lights and familiar streets, there is now only a gray, scarred wasteland. The dam itself stands, ironically, mostly intact, a silent witness to the carnage it failed to contain. The mystery of why this happened is not found in the failure of the concrete, but in the arrogance of the planning. Geologists had warned that the mountain was unstable, that the rock formations were prone to exactly this kind of collapse. But those warnings were silenced by developers and engineers who believed they could tame the geography of the Earth. In the days that followed, the search for survivors became a search for fragments of lives. The scale of the destruction was so total that rescue teams were often unsure of where the town had once stood. They found toys, kitchen utensils, and pieces of clothing embedded in the mud, thousands of feet away from their original locations. Science eventually reconstructed the event using modern fluid dynamics and geological modeling. They discovered that the landslide was not a sudden accident, but an acceleration of a slow-moving, years-long creep that was entirely documented but ignored. The mega-tsunami was the largest of its kind in history, a product of a perfect, lethal intersection of bad geology and human neglect. The tragedy of the Vajont Dam remains a haunting reminder of the limits of human control over the natural world. It forces us to confront the reality that for all our engineering prowess, we live on a planet that is constantly moving, shifting, and resetting itself. The disaster was not an act of fate, it was an act of human omission. When we look at the ruins of such places, we are looking at our own vulnerability. We build our cities in the shadow of mountains and the path of waters, often convinced that our mastery of the environment is absolute. We assume that the ground beneath our feet is a constant, when in reality, it is a variable. The survivors who lived through that night carried the weight of the silence that followed for the rest of their lives. They spoke of a wind that preceded the water, a displaced air current so violent it knocked trees flat before the wave even arrived. This is the detail that lingers in the accounts of those who saw the darkness coming. It was a warning that arrived too late to be understood. As we look at the landscape of the Vajont Valley today, it has been reclaimed by nature, but the scars on the mountain remain visible, a giant, jagged wound that never fully closes. If this were to happen today, would we recognize the warning signs? We have better sensors, more sophisticated satellites, and deeper geological understanding, yet the instinct for progress often overrides the instinct for caution. We still build in high-risk zone, and we still trust our models to predict the unpredictable. The story of the Vajont Dam is not just a tragedy of the 1960s. It is a permanent cautionary tale about the necessity of humility in the face of tectonic power. The Earth does not care for our deadlines, our budgets, or our construction schedules. It operates on a timeline of millennia, while we operate in the fragile minutes of a single human life. The final realization for anyone studying this event is that the city did not just disappear. It was reclaimed by a mountain that had been waiting for the exact moment the balance tipped. We often think of disasters as sudden interruptions to human progress, but in this case, the disaster was the conclusion of a story that started long before the first stone of the dam was laid. It was a collision of human ambition and geological inevitability. The 4 minutes that erased Longarone were merely the final act of a geological drama that took decades to play out. As we conclude this investigation into the silence of the valley, we must ask ourselves how much of our own world is currently sitting on a similar invisible shift. The danger lies not in what we know, but in what we choose to ignore. History is a record of people who thought they were safe until the moment they weren't. When we look at the history of the Vajont Dam, we aren't just looking at a disaster. We are looking at a mirror held up to our own civilization. We are reminded that we are temporary occupants of a landscape that is far more powerful than we are willing to admit. If you found this exploration of the Vajont disaster thought-provoking, We invite you to join our community here at Fact Harbor. By hitting the subscribe button and turning on notifications, you ensure that you stay informed as we continue to peel back the layers of history's most profound mysteries and forgotten disasters. We delve deep into the archives to bring you the stories that shaped our world and the warnings that history left behind for us to decipher. Join us as we explore the intersection of human endeavor and the raw, untamable forces of nature. The next chapter of our journey into the shadows of the past is already waiting. Together, we will continue to uncover the truths that time has tried to bury and the lessons that remain etched in the silence of the ruins. Thank you for walking through this history with us, and we look forward to seeing you in our next deep dive documentary.